Masechet Baba Batra, Daf Sadi Zayin. We're talking about a drink called tamad that's made from taking grape pumice or pulp, that's the leftover of the grapes, after you squeeze all the juice out of them, but it still has some taste left over in there. And you steep that pulp in water for a while, and then you strain out the water. That water will now have a taste of wine. So the question is it considered wine or is it considered water? One effect of that will be, what is the beracha? Is it shakol or is it borei gefen? That's what we discussed before. Now we're going to apply the same question to prohibitions. So we say, tenor banan, shemarim shel teruma, rishon v'sheni asur, ushlishi mutar. Rabbi Meir omer af shelishi benoten ta'am. Let's say the original grapes are teruma. These were separated off as teruma, so only a kohen can eat them. For anyone else, it's prohibited. So obviously, anyone who would benefit or eat from that grape pulp, that would definitely be prohibited. But what if you put it into water and someone drinks that water? And you can actually repeat the process. You can drain out that water and then you can put a second batch of water in it, steep it, strain that out. You can do it 3 times. You can do it many times. Obviously, each time you do it, it's going to become weaker and weaker in taste. So at some point, it's not going to get any flavor from out of the grapes. So that's just going to be water that you put these grapes that you used many times. So how many times do you have to do it? Will it still be prohibited? And at what point will it be permitted? So this baraita says that if the original grapes are teruma, then the first water that you steep in it and the second batch of water that you steep in it are prohibited. But by the third time, the taste is already so diluted that there's no teruma left in it and it's permitted. That's Tanakama. Rabbi Meir says is more stringent. Even the third batch is prohibited if it has flavor of wine. Depends. You have to see. You have to taste it. Well, you can't. You give it to Kohen, taste it, and see if it still tastes like wine. And if it does, then it's prohibited as teruma. If it doesn't taste like wine, then it's permitted to anyone. It has the status of water. Okay, that's for teruma. V'shel ma'aser rishon asur sheni mutar. Rabbi Meir omer av sheni benoten tam. Now ma'aser is less stringent of a prohibition than teruma. So therefore, we're also going to be less stringent regarding the number of times that you steep it. Now the ma'aser here is talking about ma'aser sheni. That's the type that you have to bring to Jerusalem. Anybody can eat it in Jerusalem, but it has to be done there. That has a type of holiness. It is holy. Although anyone can eat it, it has to be done in Jerusalem. Anyone who eats it outside Jerusalem is violating a prohibition. So that's what we're talking about, where it's prohibited for anyone to consume it outside of Jerusalem. We're not talking about maaser rishon that goes to a Levi or maaser ani that goes to a poor person, because those don't have intrinsic holiness. It's just a financial obligation that you have to give it to a Levi or give it to the poor person. If that Levi or poor person decide that they're going to sell it or give it back to anyone can eat it, or if they want to share it. So there's no intrinsic holiness, there's no prohibition of eating it besides the monetary obligation to give it to them. So we're talking only about maaser sheni. And it says here that the first batch is prohibited. But the second batch of water that you put into the grapes that were maaser sheni, that already is permitted because this is a lesser prohibition than teruma. Rabbi Meir here also is stringent and says, even the second batch, if there's taste of wine, then that's considered wine. And if it's considered wine, then that's the grape, since the grape taste is in it, so too the prohibition transfers into the water as well, and so that water would also be prohibited. He would consider it wine. V'shel hekdesh. Now hekdesh is more stringent than even teruma. So this is going to be the most stringent law. Shelishi asur urbi'i mutar. Rabbi Meir omer af rebi'i benoten ta'am. If I made these grapes hekdesh, or I made the pulp hekdesh, and then 1, 2, and 3, even the third batch is prohibited. Only the fourth time that I put water in it, that water will be permitted. But Rabbi Meir again here says the same principle, that even the fourth one, if it still has taste, it might not have taste, but if it does, if it tastes like wine, then not only, just like the taste transfers, so too the prohibition transfers along with the taste. Good, that's all baraita number 1. Now we have a contradiction from a second baraita. Urminhi, shel hekdesh le'olam asur, v'shel ma'aser le'olam mutar. mutar. Kashya hekdesh hekdesh. Kashya maaser maaser. The second Braita says that if the grapes were hekdesh, then forever it's prohibited. Even if you do it 4, 5, 10 times, keep changing the water, still that water becomes prohibited by the grapes. And if it's maaser, meaning maaser sheni, then even the first batch is permitted. So this is a contradiction, because regarding maaser, we said only that the first is prohibited, and the second Braita says even the first is permitted. That's also a problem regarding Hekdesh, because here it says Hekdesh forever is prohibited, whereas we said above that Hekdesh, the third one, is prohibited, but the fourth one is permitted. So we have to solve both of these problems. Hekdesh hekdesh la kashya. Kan bekedushat haguf, kan bekedushat damim. We can resolve the two baraitot regarding what they say about hekdesh by explaining that we're talking about two different types of hekdesh. There's one thing called kedushat haguf. That will apply to anything that can be sacrificed. A kosher animal that can be sacrificed, wine, oil, flour. These are things that are actually put on the mizbeach. These I can sanctify to a very high level by saying, this animal, I'm making it a korban olah. Or regarding wine, I could say this is going to be wine of libation that will be poured on the mizbeach. That's a very high level. A lower level of kedusha is kedushat damim. That applies to actually anything in the world. I could even take this pen and say, I'm consecrating this pen to hekdesh. I'm not really doing it because I want to use it. And in that case, the pen itself, its body is not hekdesh, but rather its value. And what I could do after that is I could take the value of this pen, 50 cents, and I could transfer it to money, and then that money will be hekdesh. So it's only the value that is consecrated, not the item itself, because I can transfer the holiness, and that's a lower level of hekdesh. So we can use this to resolve the problem. The second baraita was talking about a high level of kedushat haguf. If these grapes were made into kedushat haguf, then even no matter how many times I steep water in it, all of it will be prohibited. Whereas the first baraita that said only 3 times, but the 4th time is permitted, that was when I said these grapes, I'm donating these grapes to the Bet HaMikdash, not as a libation, but rather just the value of them. In that case, since that's a lower level of kedusha, it goes only 3 times, but not the 4th time. Maaser amaaser namela kashya. Kan b'maaser vadai, kan b'maaser demai. And also, I can resolve what the two baraitot say about maaser, that the first baraita is talking about maaser for sure. I definitely know I have this produce here. I separated this maaser to be maaser sheni. I know it's maaser. In that case, the first steeping will be prohibited, and after that is permitted. Whereas if it's maaser demai, I get maaser from an amaaretz. I'm not sure. Some of them do take maaser, some of them don't take maaser, so it's doubtful. Since it's a doubt, I'm not going to be so stringent to even prohibit the steeping. In that case, that's what the second baraita was talking about when it said that maaser, any steeping, even the first one, is permitted. That was talking about demai. אמר רבי יוחנן, משום רבי שמעון בן יהוסדק, כדרך שאמרו לעניין איסורן, כך אמרו לעניין הכשרן. And then we're going to see yet another application, besides what beracha do you say on it, and also whether it's prohibited. If the grapes are prohibited, does the prohibition transfer? Here's yet another application that Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yehosadak. Whatever you say about it being prohibited is also true regarding this liquid making food susceptible to tum'ah. There's a general rule. If you have fruit, let's say, fruit just was on the tree, it fell off the tree, and that fruit is not susceptible to tum'ah. Even if something tameh comes in contact with it, that it will not transfer over, a dead mouse or something, the fruit will not become tameh because it's not yet susceptible to tum'ah until it gets wet. There's 2 conditions. It has to get wet by one of 7 liquids. Wine and water are 2 of those liquids. And second, it has to be that the owner wants it to get wet. If it just rains on it, the rain came by itself. The owner did not put it out in the rain. It was outside. The owner has no care that it gets wet. Maybe he doesn't even want it to get wet. And the rain just fell on it by itself. That's not considered getting wet. It has to be only with the intention of the owner. He has to either pour it on or actually want the rain to go on it. Okay, so now that we know those two things, so Rabbi Yochanan here is saying that whatever you define above as being prohibited or permitted, if you say that it was prohibited, then we consider that to be wine. If you say it's permitted, then we consider that to be water. And that will have an effect on whether this wine/water, tamad, that if it touches fruit, will that fruit become susceptible to tum'ah? So now we ask about Rabbi Yochanan. Hechsharan demai, idemaya achshure machshire, idechamra achshure machshire. The Gemara asks, what does it matter what kind of liquid it is for making something else susceptible to tum'ah? If it's considered water, so then that will make something susceptible to tum'ah. And if you consider it wine, it also makes that food item susceptible to tum'ah. So what difference does it make if it's a prohibited because it came from terumah and it's the first steeping, and so it's prohibited as tumah, and therefore it's considered wine. And so if that touches fruit, it makes it susceptible to tumah. If it's water, it also makes it susceptible to tumah. So what difference does it make which one it is? And the answer is la sericha sheted mado b'megeshamim. Oh, we're talking about when it rained. See, if the owner actually took this water, strained it out, and then purposely poured it on fruit to make it wet, to wash it, and he wants it wet, then you're right, it wouldn't matter whether it's wine or water. But if it happens by itself, that it just rains on it, then it will make a difference. You see, if it's water and it rained on it and the owner didn't care about it, then it will not become susceptible to tumah. However, if, let's say the rain fell into a bowl with this pulp in it and it turned it into wine, it becomes prohibited from prohibited item and it is wine. If it's wine, then since a wine is considered a drink, we say automatically that does make the food susceptible to tum'ah. Even if the owner didn't know about it, nevertheless, once it becomes wine, so that becomes officially a drink and officially something that we say is with the knowledge and agreement and wanting of the owner. So that's where it makes a difference when it rains by itself on it. If it's water, it will not be susceptible to tum'ah. If it becomes prohibited and is considered wine, then it will be susceptible to tum'ah. So we ask further clarification. Now we ask, assuming that the rain fell into an empty bowl, and if so, then the owner took that bowl now full of rainwater and he poured it onto the grape pulp. If so, that means he now intends it. So it doesn't matter if it originally was rainwater. Now, by taking it and pouring it onto the grape pulp, that means he does want it. He obviously does intend it. So then it won't matter either way. It's going to make whatever that pours onto, the fruit that touches it, is certainly going to be susceptible to tumah. So we answer, La siricha shenitmad me'elav. No, we're talking about where it made tamad by itself. In other words, the bowl had the pulp already in it, it was outside, and it rained. And the owner didn't know or didn't want it to happen, and it rained automatically in it and became tamad by itself. He didn't do anything. So that's why it does make a difference. If it's wine, that's considered officially a drink, and it will make other things tameh, whereas if it's water, it will not make other things susceptible to tum'ah. Now we ask further. Remember the case in the Batra where you steep it many times. You do it once and then twice and three times. Each time you strain out the water and you put new water in. Now he took out the original water, right? And then he put a second batch of water in. So from the fact that he strained out the water, that means he wants it, right? And then he does it again. That means he wants it. Doesn't that show that he wants it by straining it out? And then obviously, if he puts it onto fruit, it will become susceptible to tumah, whether it's water or wine. So it makes no difference again. And we answer, Amara Papa be'para sheshota rishon rishon. We're talking about a case where everything happened by itself without any intervention by the human. It's where a cow came and kept drinking it. So to sum up, we're talking about the following case, where someone had a bowl with grape pulp in it, and he left it outside. And then it it rained, and it turned into, well, it depends if it turned into wine or it turned into water, depending on if it was prohibited or not. And then a cow came along, and the cow drank the first steeping of it, and he drank it all up. Now there's no more water left. After that, it rained a second time, and then again the cow came and drank it up. However many times that happened. Now, also after one of these times, the cow had some of this liquid on his face, and it dropped onto some fruit, or he knocked the bowl over, and it poured onto some fruit. So that's where the case we're talking about is it will make a difference if it's wine or water. If it's considered wine, then no matter what, that fruit will be susceptible to tum'ah. However, if it's considered water, if it's not prohibited, meaning if it's after one time or two times or three times, depending on what the item is, since it all happened by itself, the water came down and the owner didn't care about it, it became tamad, and then this cow came and knocked it over and fell onto the fruit after the first, second, third time, and the owner did not want it to pour on the fruit, it didn't want it to become wet. If it's all considered water, meaning it's not prohibited, then it will not be susceptible to tumah. So we're talking about this particular case, and that's Rabbi Yochanan's Chidush, that whatever you say about this drink being prohibited or permitted will affect also whether it makes the fruit susceptible to tumah or not in a case like this. Next, we have a question about whether you can use different types of wine for Kiddush. Amar Rav Zutra bar Tuvia Amar Rav, En omrim Kiddush hayom ela al hayayin hara'ui linasech al gabe hamizbeach. A very interesting law by Rav, that one cannot use wine for Kiddush Hayom. That means for Friday night Kiddush. This may or may not apply also to Saturday Kiddush, which is less stringent, but we're focusing on Friday night Kiddush, where it says Zachor, you have to remember Shabbat, and so this is connected to a mitzvah deoraita. So the wine that you use for Friday night Kiddush has to be the same type of wine that would be worthy of pouring on the Mizbeach, which is a very interesting law. It means we're connecting the holiness of the Mizbeach and the Bet HaMikdash to our own Friday night table. Just like Shabbat is creating sacred time equal to sacred space of the Bet HaMikdash, and therefore we connect the two. This is connected also to a sugya in Masechet Shabbat, in Perek of Bameh Madlikin, that talks about lighting Shabbat candles, and it says there that the types of oil and wicks that you are allowed to use for Shabbat candles are the same as those that you would use in the Bet HaMikdash to light the menorah. So that's another example of the way that the rabbis, after the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, even though we don't have that place of holiness anymore in our daily lives, but nevertheless, we can transfer that sense of Kedusha to our own homes, to the Shabbat lamps, and here to the Kiddush. So you could actually think of the wine of Kiddush as holy, equal, similar to an offering of Yayin Nesech on the Mizbeach. And Rav concretizes that by saying that whatever type of wine you can use for the Mizbeach, you can use for Kiddush, but if it's not good for the Mizbeach, then you cannot use it for Kiddush either. Okay, lemeute mai. What types of wine is Rav trying to exclude? Ilema lemeute yayin migito vehatane Rabbi Chia. Yayin migito lo yavi vim hebi kasher vechavanti im hebi kasher anan afilu lechatechila name. Eventually, this sugya is going to bring up the question of tamad, cannot be used for Kiddush, but first we're going through some other possibilities. So, what does Rav come to exclude? If you say he is excluding wine that's fresh from the press, we call that grape juice. In other words, it has not fermented yet. You just pressed it and you drink it straight away. But over there we have a baraita taught by Rabbi Chia that one is not permitted to bring wine from the pressed grape juice as on the Mizbeach, as Yayin Nesech, Vimhevi, and if you did bring it B'di'avad, it's okay. Now we have a rule. Anything that is okay B'di'avad on the Mizbeach, you can use for Kiddush, even the Chatechila. Because after all, it's not exactly the same. I know we're bringing holiness and all that, but actually pouring something on the Mizbeach has to be top quality. Whereas for Kiddush, as long as b'di'avad, it would be kosher a wine libation, so that's sufficient for Kiddush. And therefore, grape juice, although lechetechila, one should not bring a wine libation from grape juice, since b'di'avad it's okay, therefore you can use it for Kiddush, even lechetechila. So it's good. There's a very important halakha till today. Some people don't like wine or can't drink alcohol, and therefore they can use grape juice. Damarava, sochet adam eshkol shel anavim ve'omer alav kiddush hayom, and Rava in fact says that someone can squeeze juice from a cluster of grapes. Obviously, you're going to squeeze it before Shabbat, because that would be a melacha, but you can squeeze it right Friday afternoon, and then you can use it for Kiddush on Friday night. So maybe Rav is coming to exclude wine that's taken from the mouth of the barrel. Right when you open a barrel of wine, there's scum floating on top. It's gross. Or from the bottom where the dregs are, the lees, also bad quality wine. So is it saying that you cannot use that type of wine? But here we also have a braita taught by Rabbi Chia that if you take wine from the top of the barrel or the bottom of the barrel, lechatechila, you should not use that for a wine libation, but b'diavad, if you did, it's okay. And therefore, for Kiddush, lechatechila, it would be good. So Rav cannot be excluding that. ואלא למעוטי יין כושי בורק הליסטון של מרתף ושל סימוקים והתניא בכולן לא יביא ואם הביא כשר. So maybe Rav is coming to exclude and saying that you cannot use for Kiddush black wine, white wine. This is wine, this comes from the word, heliston comes from the Greek, helios, wine that you leave out in the sun to become very sweet. Wine from the cellar, like you take or just a random barrel from the cellar without checking what it is, or raisin wine. So maybe we're excluding these types. No, but we have also a braita that says all these types, one, should not bring lechatechila on the mizbeach. But if you did bring it b'di'avad on the Mizbeach, then that's okay. So since b'di'avad it's okay on the Mizbeach, therefore lechatechila, it would be okay for Kiddush. So it can't be that Rav is excluding these either for Kiddush. Ve'ela lemu'ute yayin koses mazug megule v'shel shemarim v'sherechora detanya b'cholan no yavi v'imhebi pasul. Rather, Rav must be coming to exclude some of these types of wines where you're not allowed to bring it on the Mizbeach, not even b'di'avad. And this includes souring wine that's on the verge of souring. We discussed that already. We saw there was a machloket about that. It's tastes like wine but smells like vinegar. Or mixed wine. It's not 100% wine. You mixed water into it. Or wine that was left uncovered, and it could be that a snake put venom in it. Veshel shemarim. That's tamad. That's the topic of our whole discussion here. That's when you put the pulp into water and you let it stay there for a while and then strain it out. So that type of water wine, or wine that has a bad smell. Regarding all these, the Braita says you cannot bring it on the Mizbeach, and if you did, it's no good, not even b'di'avad. And therefore, it could be that Rav is excluding one or some of these. So let's now specify, limutemai, which items on the list could Rav be talking about that you cannot use them for Kiddush? Let's go through them. If Rav was coming to exclude souring wine, well, that's not likely, because that's a discussion and controversy between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. They were discussing what beracha do you say on it? Would it be hagefen or shakol? Is it considered wine or not? So it would depend on that, and we already have a whole controversy about that. Now, it is possible that Rav is giving his own opinion about this subject, but it's not likely because we have a whole machloket about this, and we never mentioned Rav when we were discussing that, so it's more likely that Rav is talking about a different issue. So let's go to the next one. If you say that Rav is coming to exclude mixed wine, where you put some water into the wine, well then it should be the opposite. You're actually improving the wine by doing that. You see, there's an important distinction between wine that you use for the Mizbeach is supposed to be 100% wine, but that's not drinkable 100% wine. It's too strong. So any wine that you're drinking and you're going to say a beracha on it is actually supposed to have water mixed into it. We know this from the following statement of Rabbi Yosef, the son of Rabbi Chanina, that Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer, they have a disagreement when it comes to wine that you put on the Mizbeach. Are you allowed to put some water into it? Is mixed water with wine okay for the Mizbeach, or is it not good? There is a machloket about that. But even Chachamim, who say you cannot put water into the wine for the altar, they would agree with Rabbi Eliezer when it comes to the cup that you use for Berkat HaMazon. That's the cup that you hold when you're making the zimun, and then you say Borei Pri Gefen and drink it after Berkat HaMazon. And they say that you should put water into that. In fact, you cannot say a blessing on it unless you put water into it, because it's not drinkable. It's not respectable to drink 100% wine. You're supposed to put water into it. And therefore, this is actually an interesting example where there is a distinction between the Mizbeach and Kiddush. When it comes to the type of wine, so the type of wine, the quality of the wine, that there's an equivalence between Kiddush and the Mizbeach. But when it comes to the strength of the wine, there is a distinction between them. And wine for the Mizbeach should be 100% wine, but wine that you drink and say a beracha on cannot be 100% wine. It would only be kosher to say a beracha on for Birkat HaMazon, for Kiddush, if it's diluted. So Rav certainly cannot be coming to exclude mixed wine, because you have to mix the wine for Kiddush and for Birkat HaMazon. Ile ma'ute megule sakanahi. Is Rav coming to exclude uncovered wine that might have venom in it? Well, then why would you drink that? Rav doesn't have to tell you, don't drink wine that was uncovered because it might be poisonous. Obviously, nobody's going to drink that if it's poisonous, and you shouldn't use that for Kiddush, you shouldn't use that for anything. So Rav can't be talking about that. So maybe Rav is coming to exclude wine made with water mixed with pulp that you strain out. Maybe that's what he's coming to exclude. So what are the details of the case? If it's where you put 3 jugs of wine onto the pulp, and when you strained it out, you got 4 jugs out, well, then everybody would agree that that is good wine, because that ratio, if you put 3 in and you got 4 out, that means there was still some juice left in that pulp, and you got all that juice, and that's wine. And 1 part wine with 3 parts water, that's fantastic, and everybody would agree that that's totally fine for Kiddush. If you put in 3 jugs and you got out only 3.5 jugs, well, that was a machloket between Rabbanan and Acherim that we discussed on a previous daf. The question was, when you put 3 and to get out 3.5, are you getting out 3 of water and then only a half of wine? Or did some of the water stay in the pulp and you're getting out a whole jug of wine, in which case it's okay? But that was a machloket among those Tanaim. So Rav is not coming to talk about that we already discussed. Rather, final answer number 1 is Rav is coming to exclude wine that has a bad odor. That type of wine is no good on the Mizbeach and is also no good for Kiddush. It's not respectful. You're coming to honor Shabbat and you're going to use this bad smelling wine, so that's no good. You're not allowed to use that for wine. That's a good answer. Second answer, you know what? Let's go back to the case of uncovered wine. I know we said that it's poisonous, so you're not going to drink it anyway, or it might be poisonous. But we're talking about a case where you passed it through a sieve. And when you pass it through a sieve, the venom, if there is venom in there, has a different consistency than the wine, and the sieve will catch it. And either you'll drink the rest. I don't know if anybody would drink that if you knew it had venom in it, but at least you'll know if there was venom in it, so that you can decide if you should stay away from it, or you know what, there was never venom and it's okay. So you might have thought that even if it was uncovered, but I passed it through a sieve, and now there's no venom in it, I might have thought that that's okay to use for Kiddush, and that's what Rav is coming to tell us, that no, not good for the Mizbeach, and also not good for Kiddush. Why not? But it has no venom in it. Rabbi Nechemia, afilu hachi hakribehu na lefechatecha hayirsecha o hayisa fanecha. Rabbi Nechemia teaches that even if you strain out the venom, nevertheless, is this a respectful offering? He quotes the pasuk in Malachi, where Malachi is telling the people are bringing all kinds of korbanot that have blemishes, that are bad quality. And Malachi asked them, present it unto your governor. Will he be pleased with you, or will he accept your person? Take this meat that you have, this bad quality, or this wine that you left uncovered and had venom, and you strained out the wine. If you would present it to the governor because you need a favor from him, would he say, what a beautiful gift you gave me. It was uncovered. Oh, there was venom in it, but you strained it out. It's okay. I still like you. No, he wouldn't say that. He would say, what kind of terrible gift it is. You don't want to drink it. You're just giving me this bad stuff because you're afraid to drink it. So just like a governor would not accept it, all the more so, you should not present it to Hashem. Not that Hashem is drinking it, not that it will make any difference to Hashem, but it makes a difference to you. If I give a gift, I know whether I'm giving something that is high quality, that I'm showing that I'm really devoted, that I really am thankful, that I want to give this thing, or if I'm giving the bottom of the barrel, or even worse, this wine that might have had some venom in it. Okay, it's not that Hashem is going to drink it, but we know that this is an improper, disrespectful gift to give, and that's what Rav was coming to exclude. Just like you cannot pour that on the Mizbeach, so too, you cannot use such uncovered wine for Kiddush. Last question. Be'amineh Rav Kahana Hamud Rav Meshashia Me'erava. Rav Kahana, the father-in-law of Rav Meshashia, asked Rava the following question. Hamar Chivarian Mahu. Can you use white wine for either Mizbeach or for Kiddush? Although we discussed in the Baraita above, it could be that Rav Kahana didn't have that Baraita, so he asks, Amar le al tere yain ki yit adam. He quotes a pasuk in Mishleh. Mishleh's message is, don't have a lot of wine. Don't drink a lot, because then you get drunk and you make bad decisions. And it describes an example of red wine. Do not look upon the wine when it is red. Mishleh is giving an example of where someone would be especially enticed towards wine, and it describes how it glides down smoothly and so on. So when Mishleh chooses the best type of wine to describe, it chooses red wine, not white wine. Therefore, this pasuk shows that red wine is superior. Now, although in general you should not be a drunk and be drinking wine all the time, when you're supposed to drink wine, like for Kiddush, you should use superior quality wine. There is a machloket among the poskim whether you can or not use white wine for Kiddush. Rambam says no, but other opinions say yes. So certainly better to use red wine for Kiddush. And last comment: Kankanim be'sharon v'chule tana pitasot naot umegu farot. The Mishnah says that if someone buys 100 jugs of wine in the Sharon region, so he knows that the jugs should all be high quality, but 10 up to 10 may be bad quality, and the buyer has to accept that, because it's not going to be 100% perfect. However, if he gets delivered 11 bad quality jugs, then the buyer can come and complain. He says, I bought 100 jugs and 100 good jugs, and you sent me these bad quality ones. Now, the Baraita here teaches that even those 10 bad quality jugs can't be very bad. They still have to be beautiful and sealed with pitch. So even if they have some cracks in them, a hole, they're not perfect, nevertheless, they have to look nice and have to be sealed with pitch so that they'll be waterproof, and they still have to be good and usable, not totally bad and broken jugs. And so 10 of them can be these lower quality, but even the lower quality have to be somewhat good. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.